Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is The Current Podcast. It is a political whodunit.
Parliamentarians, including members of this House, knowingly and wittingly assisted a hostile foreign state in Parliament and in our elections to the detriment of the people of Canada. This is shocking. Simple question. Will the Prime Minister release the names of these parliamentarians?
It's Conservative MP Michael Chong in the House of Commons speaking about allegations that some members of Parliament knowingly helped foreign governments meddle in Canadian affairs. The allegations come from a report by the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, or NSICOP. The identities of the MPs in question were redacted for national security reasons, and as you heard, some MPs are demanding the government name names, but Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc said that's not their place.
We agree with members of this House that the appropriate forum to look at these matters is the Commission, already set up and operating. Officials from the Privy Council office have already been in touch with the Hug Commission to determine the best way forward. We think that's a responsible way to proceed, not simply standing up and illegally announcing a list of names like my colleague suggests.
René Villemeux is the Bloc Québécois MP for Trois-Rivières. He's also his party's ethics critic. He put forward a motion to have the report included in the Foreign Interference Inquiry, and the House will vote on that motion later today. Alistair McGregor is an NDP MP for Cowichan-Malahat-Langford in British Columbia. He's also that party's public safety critic, and they both join us now. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning.
René, Michael Chong says these allegations are shocking. Would you agree?
Of course they're shocking. When we read the report, actually, even though we knew some of the stuff, we went actually crazy. This is big.
Have they changed the way that you look at your colleagues in the House?
Well, from our part of the Bloc Québécois, we haven't been the target of foreign interference. So actually, for our party, we're pretty safe. But we are worried that some of us right now are sitting and voting in the House. And the problem is that we don't know who they are, how many there are. And that is quite disturbing.
Alistair McGregor, your colleague, Alexandre Bouleret, said, in his words, everybody's a suspect, that people are watching each other. Is it you? So when he says that, how are you feeling? Do you feel like everybody's a suspect?
Well, there's certainly a cloud of suspicion over the entire House of Commons right now. But, for our small caucus, we have two of our members who have directly been impacted by foreign interference, MP Jenny Kwan and, of course, our leader Jagmeet Singh. So for our caucus, it's personal. We understand how serious this issue is. And ultimately, I think I share the same view as René. We want to find out who our colleagues are, because ultimately this is a violation of the oath that we took when we took our seats in the House of Commons.
And so given that, René, what specifically are you asking for in this motion?
Well, in the motion that we put, we brought it to the House on last Friday, and we asked for the whole commission to have its mandate extended so they can look particularly in the latest allegation from the report. We know that the whole commission has a wide mandate, but we wanted to shed light on this part, actually, because like when Alistair said, we're looking around and we don't know who's a suspect, who's not, and the climate already tense in the House of Commons at the end of the session is kind of really strange right now, because we know there are people, we don't know who they are or what they did.
So what would you want to learn if this information is included in the scope of the inquiry?
Well, probably there are two things. People are asking for names, and we're not asking for names per se. We're asking for an investigation that will. You just can't reveal names that are classified top secret. That's a felony. But we're looking for ways to, first of all, take these people out. Just make sure that something like this doesn't happen again.
What does that mean, take these people out?
Well, they can't sit in the House if they've been tainted by a foreign state. I think the leaders of each party has a responsibility in identifying the people that were tainted. And like Alistair said, the two NDP were targets. They were not at all tainted. It's not the same thing. But some people passed information or influenced colleague in decision, and this cannot be tolerated.
If that person, if somebody just disappears, though, doesn't that suggest that, you said, and this is what Dominic LeBlanc has said, that naming names would be illegal. But if the person suddenly vanishes, does that not suggest that that person perhaps is the name that people wanted released?
That's a possible consequence, unfortunately. But I think that if the Liberal government goes as slow as they usually do, people would just not apply again for the next election. That'll be it.
Alistair McGregor, we did request an interview with Dominic LeBlanc, the Public Safety Minister. He said no. But when he was asked yesterday about releasing the names, as we just heard, he said that he'd been advised by the RCMP that if he did, he himself could be criminally charged. Do you think these names should be released?
Well, look, the Liberal government, they were the victim of a scathing report from NCCOP. If you look at the conclusion of the NCCOP report, you can see that the Liberals have really failed to treat this issue with the seriousness that it deserves. I think ultimately we want to arrive at a point where Canadians can be confident that the person that they are choosing in the next federal election is not compromised by a foreign power. I think one of the avenues we could be taking in the immediate term is to have all party leaders briefed on this matter so that they learn the names. And that's something that our leader, Jagmeet Singh, has committed to. He will be receiving a briefing on that because party leaders have an incredible amount of power over their caucus. They can figure out who gets to sit in that caucus, who gets to have their nomination papers signed so they can run under the party's banner. So I think those are immediate steps we can take. But I understand there's a big gulf between intelligence and evidence. And so we have to be very careful what the process is going forward. But the immediate steps are party leaders should be briefed.
And Jagmeet Singh has said that he wants this confidential briefing on these allegations. He also promised to remove any NDP MPs from caucus if they are named. That sounds like a backdoor way of identifying the people, doesn't it?
Well, I think it's in line with the proactive way that we've approached this issue because it was a year.
But to be clear, though, I mean, that does sound like a way to identify the people without identifying the people.
Well, I'll say this, Matt. People have been removed from caucuses for far less serious offenses, and we don't always have to specify what the reason is. But again, this is about accountability to the Canadian public. I think they're more interested in the security of their ballots, not internal party machinations at this point.
Can he actually fire an MP if the names aren't yet known to the wider public and they have not had some measure of due process?
An MP can't be fired, but they can be removed from a party's caucus. They would still represent that seat in the House of Commons. And again, a party leader does have control over the nomination papers, over who gets to run under the party's banner. That's at least what it is like in the NDP.
René Villemer, the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, says that, he's declined to get that same security clearance necessary so that he could be briefed. He says that this would keep him from speaking out about these issues, that it would be a gag order in some ways. What do you think his responsibility is?
Well, I think he has bigger responsibilities than that. Of course, it'll be some kind of gag order because he could not reveal the exact information he received, but he could use that information for, like Alistair said, manage his caucus. I think to refusing the briefing at this point is irresponsible and also will allow him to keep on shouting and shouting without having to be accountable. I think that the reasonable conduct would be to take the security clearance and try to manage the caucus. I know our leader is in the process. He's thinking about it and looking at the process right now because it's not something you do overnight. But this is, I don't think there's another way. And if, like you said a bit earlier, if people are removed from caucus, people will ask questions. But then again, that's a very light sentence compared to what was done, if it is the case. Now, we're not saying everybody is tainted, but some question had to be asked. Can I just,
I apologize for interrupting. Can I just ask you about the shouting bit and what you said earlier, that the mood as you get toward the end of this session is a bit strange. Do you worry that, I mean, this is a very serious issue, and do you worry that politics is always going to be part of it, it's the House of Commons, but that politics will obscure the seriousness of these allegations because it will be a way for various parties, perhaps yours, to score partisan points?
Well, some party will use it for a score partisan point, but I think foreign interference has no color, has no partisan color. And this is public interest subject. It's security subject, national security, and it should be taken as such. I think that making small politics on the subject would be very mean in the context.
Alistair, what can be done now to reassure Canadians in the absence of this information that their MPs in Ottawa, the MPs that they send to the capital, have Canadian interests at heart?
That is the great question of the day, Matt. And again, we don't yet know what this process is going to be. But at the very outset, and I think what should give Canadians comfort, if there is any to be found, is they need to see that all of the political party leaders are taking this issue seriously, are going to get briefed by security and intelligence officials so that they can take the appropriate first steps. How these names are eventually handled in the future, I don't know what that process will be. But again, this is known as silly season in Ottawa, but because of the pernicious nature of this threat, how serious it is, I think we need to see a united front from all political party leaders. Jagmeet's committed to starting that process. He will be getting briefed on this, and he will be learning who the names are.
The pernicious nature of this threat, if it's not dealt with in the right way, just very briefly, what do you think's at stake?
Trust in our democratic system. We already know that Canadians are having a lot of trust issue with institutions, but underpinning all of those institutions is our democratic system, and trust that when you cast a ballot, you're casting it for someone who has the best interests of your community at heart and Canada. Good to have you both here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
René Villemur is the Bloc Québécois MP for Trois-Rivières. Alistair McGregor is NDP MP for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford, and the NDP's public safety critic. We did request to speak with Conservative members Andrew Scheer and Michael Chong. We didn't get a response. Dick Fadden is a former national security advisor to 2 Canadian prime ministers, former director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Dick, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Why shouldn't the names of these people who allegedly worked with foreign governments be made public?
Well, I think if their names are being made public in the current environment, we're going to destroy their lives and their career. They may well merit that, but they may well not. And I think they are entitled to some form of due process. Be they parliamentarians or anybody else, they should be deemed to be innocent until proven guilty. And they're entitled to some measure of privacy. Having said all of that, we don't seem to have that process in hand right now. So we need to put that process in place, because eventually I do agree the name should be made public. If you and I are accused of a crime and hauled before the courts, not a great analogy, our names would remain public. But I don't think it should be done immediately, and I think our parliamentarians should get their act together and find a way of providing them with some measure of due process. In the absence of that process, do you worry that the names will eventually come out, whether somebody leaks them or whether a member of parliament suddenly disappears from a party and is removed from caucus? Yeah, I do, because I think, there are very few things in this town that get to remain secret forever. Witness the leaks that occurred last summer. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a possibility. And if MPs just all of a sudden disappear, this is visions of what used to happen in Europe before the fall of the Berlin Wall. We do not need that to happen. I think your earlier panelists were correct in the sense that party leaders do have a responsibility, but they don't have a responsibility, to use the phrase that one of you used, to just make them disappear. If they disappear and they've been found culpable, we should know why. We, the Canadian public, I think, should know why. Can you just explain what, at the heart of it, we're talking about here? How do you go about evaluating if a person is wittingly colluding with a foreign government? What does that mean? Well, it means that consciously they have been in contact with a representative of the foreign government. They've developed a relationship, and that relationship, either based on intimidation or by the provision of benefits, leads them to promote the policies of that foreign government, or in the alternative, to push down Canadian policies that government doesn't like. But it's basically a relationship, a secret relationship, that they're conscious of. And a relationship in which you are operating for the benefit of that foreign government, not the government that you are serving? Absolutely. And now the key here is that nobody seems to be talking about a great deal. As you know, yes, they violated their oath. Is there a crime that they have committed? Is it clear and unambiguous that there's a crime? I thought that the government's, sort of initial wave of the hand and say this is a law enforcement matter is a little bit too blithe, because it's not clear that there is a crime that they've committed, other than violating their oath. I don't agree that they've committed treason. I went through the definition of treason yesterday. I think that's going a bit too far. There may be another crime. I'm not a criminal lawyer. So if there is the possibility of a crime, then the police should look at it, and they should give a considerable amount of priority to that investigation. But it's not clear that's the case. So it seems to me that's something that needs to be cleared up before a lot of other things. Again, understanding that you're not a criminal lawyer, what is the daylight between the two? What's the threshold for criminal charges if a parliamentarian colludes with a foreign government? Well, I think you'd have to identify the crime. Is it some sort of breach of trust? I just don't know. I would be wrong to do that. You'd need to bring in a criminal law lawyer. But it's not immediately obvious to me, having read all the media and having thought about it and listened to people, that there's a clear crime that has been committed. I mean, this is one of the advantages, I think, of passing C-70, which is the bill the government had introduced last week, which does create, in some manner of speaking, the crime of foreign interference. But you can't accuse people of a crime that didn't exist. So I think this is more of an ethical and of a political issue in the absence of somebody telling me that there's a very, very clear crime at issue. But somebody somewhere, be it the clerk of the House or the Department of Justice, I think to help this debate should come out and say, potentially, if these facts are true, this is the crime. Now, I assume that the way things are going, all of this is heading towards Justice Hogg, and I assume she, being a judge, will want to ask, one of the questions she'll ask herself is, what crime are we talking about here, or is this a political crime, quote unquote? But even there, everything is going to have to stay secret. So out of all of this, I think we being parliamentarians, they have a responsibility, not Hogg, not the police, not you. They, I think, have a responsibility to come up with a process that will eventually provide due process for those accused and the identification of those who might have survived the due process procedure.
When you were the CSIS director in 2010, you said that the service was concerned that there are some provincial or municipal politicians that could be under the sway of a foreign government. You caught hell for that. You were under the heat lamp for saying that. Do you feel justified and vindicated now?
I guess so, but more than anything, I feel depressed that it has taken us this long to get to the point to take this seriously. I mean, we're seriously behind our allies in recognizing and in dealing with this issue. Yes, I understand why. For a few years, we were really trying very hard, to improve our relations with China in particular. That has not worked, and even if it had worked, I don't think China would have gone away entirely. So my main reaction is, this is getting worse. It's not getting better. It's not going to go away. We need to deal with this seriously. And, with great respect for our parliamentarians, I don't think the way they're handling this is going to attract a great deal of approbation in history.
So you have said, just finally, in the last minute or so, minute and a half that we have, you have said, these are your words, we need to do something about this before the next election. The next election could be sometime within the next year and a half. What has to be done now to back to Alexander's point, to try to figure out how to ensure that Canadians have confidence in what's going on right now?
Well, I think in the short term, the Parliament should pass C-70, which contains a variety of measures that will help, including allowing the CSIS to talk to people about intelligence, providing the crime of foreign interference, and creating a foreign registry. And then the day after or the week after it receives the royal assent, the government should be in the position to appoint a foreign interference registry commissioner. The police and others should start talking about what they're going to do to deal with foreign interference. I think there's time to get a lot of this up and running if the bill gets the royal assent before, say, July. But
you said that you don't feel confident that parliamentarians right now are handling this with the sophistication in some ways that it needs to be.
No, I don't think they're taking it. I don't think they're viewing it as their problem. They're saying it's law enforcement or it's Justice Hogg. Mr. Poilievre in particular, I think, is not viewing this seriously when he says he's not prepared to take a briefing. I understand that, if parliamentarians take briefings, it does to some degree limit what they can say. I would argue that in this particular case, the national interest should trump his desire to continue to talk about this.
Dick,
that's not his view.
Good to talk to you as always. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Cheers.
Dick Fadden is a former national security advisor to two Canadian prime ministers, also the former director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service.